The first thing Zell noticed about humans was how loudly they laughed when nothing dangerous was happening. Zell had been assigned to Earth as part of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Program, a quiet project meant to observe developing species without changing their natural behavior. Humans were considered emotionally unstable but creatively promising, which made them ideal subjects for long-term study. Zell's task was simple: live with a human, observe daily habits, record findings, and upload everything before the observation window closed. The human's name was Daniel. Daniel was average by human standards: average height, average strength, average intelligence. Zell had checked the files twice to make sure there was no mistake. If humans were so unusual, Zell wondered why the council had chosen such a normal one. Daniel lived in a small apartment filled with strange objects that had no clear function. There were books that were never opened, decorations that did nothing, and a small green plant that Daniel spoke to sometimes, even though it clearly could not respond. Zell did not comment on this. Observation protocols advised patience. Every morning, Daniel prepared food, not because he needed energy immediately, but because he enjoyed the process. He would hum, move slowly, and sometimes stare out the window as if waiting for a thought to arrive. Zell found this inefficient. Most species only prepared food when hunger reached a measurable threshold. Humans, however, seemed to do many things before they were necessary. Zell recorded this. As weeks passed, Zell learned human schedules, language patterns, and emotional signals. Humans expressed complex feelings through facial movement, tone changes, and body posture. Zell could now predict Daniel's mood with 87% accuracy, which was considered excellent progress. But there was one subject missing from the data: reproduction. Every known species in the galactic network reproduced according to clear biological rules. Some followed cycles, some followed seasons, some followed strict genetic compatibility laws. Even emotional species had structured systems. Humans did not. Zell searched public databases, educational videos, historical records, and scientific articles. The information existed, but it did not align. Some humans formed lifelong pairs before reproduction. Some reproduced without long-term bonding. Some chose not to reproduce at all. Some raised offspring that were not genetically theirs. None of this matched evolutionary models. Worse, humans rarely discussed the subject openly. They joked, they avoided, they changed the topic. This concerned Zell. One evening, Daniel returned home later than usual. He placed his bag down, removed his shoes, and smiled in a way that suggested satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. "You wouldn't believe the day I had," Daniel said. Zell turned slightly, indicating attention. "Your belief is irrelevant. Please explain regardless." Daniel laughed. "See, that's why you're great." Zell did not understand why that response was positive but recorded it anyway. Daniel spoke about work, coworkers, and something called a date that had not gone as planned. He described emotions that conflicted with each other: excitement, nervousness, disappointment, hope. Zell focused on one word. "Date," Zell repeated. Daniel paused. "Yeah, you know, a date." "I do not," Zell said. Daniel shrugged. "It's just two people spending time together to see if they, you know." Zell waited. Daniel waved his hand. "If they connect." Zell's internal processors flagged the word connect as vague. "Connect in what manner?" Daniel hesitated. "Emotionally, sometimes physically. Sometimes it leads somewhere, sometimes it doesn't." "Does it lead to reproduction?" Zell asked calmly. Daniel froze. There was a silence so complete that Zell assumed a protocol violation had occurred. Then Daniel laughed loudly. "Wow, straight to the big questions, huh?" Zell tilted his head. "It is a missing data point." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "That's not really how humans talk about it." Zell noted increased heart rate and discomfort signals. "I apologize," Zell said. "I will pursue alternative data sources." Daniel exhaled in relief. Yeah, probably for the best. That night, Zell reviewed the exchange carefully. Humans showed discomfort discussing reproduction, even though they engaged in behaviors related to it frequently. This contradiction increased Zell's curiosity. Zell accessed the Interstellar Observation Archive and noted a warning symbol. The Earth observation window would close in 3 local months. All data needed to be compiled and submitted before then, or it would be permanently deleted to preserve human privacy. Must watch before it's gone, Zell thought, using a human phrase he had learned online. The next day, Zell began deeper observation. He noticed that humans did not reproduce as a group responsibility. There was no mandatory pairing, no enforced quotas, no assigned genetic matches. Instead, reproduction was tied to personal stories. Daniel visited his parents on a weekend. They spoke of childhood memories, future hopes, and something called grandkids. Daniel smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. Zell observed that reproduction carried emotional weight far beyond survival. Later, Daniel watched a video showing a human family celebrating the birth of a child. Tears appeared in Daniel's eyes. Zell scanned for injury. None detected. "Why are you leaking?" Zell asked. Daniel laughed softly. "It's just emotional." "What emotion?" Zell asked. "Hope," Daniel said. Zell paused the recording. Hope was not listed as a biological necessity, yet it appeared repeatedly. Zell expanded the study to include human history. Humans reproduced even during famine, disease, planetary instability, and uncertainty. Other species reduced reproduction under such conditions. Humans sometimes increased it. This made no sense. One night Daniel noticed Zell staring at the wall display filled with charts and symbols. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Zell replied. "I am confused." Daniel smiled. "Welcome to being human." "I am not human," Zell said. "Yeah," Daniel replied, sitting down. "But you live with one now, you'll get used to confusion." Zell considered this. "Humans do not optimize reproduction." Daniel thought for a moment. "No, we don't." "Why?" Zell asked. Daniel shrugged. "Because life isn't just math." Zell processed this statement repeatedly. If reproduction was not optimized, then humanity's survival should have failed. Yet humans expanded beyond their planet, built societies, created art, and reached the stars. Zell began to suspect the error was not in the data, but in the model. That night, Zell created a new file. Title: Human Reproduction, Preliminary Observations. Status: Incomplete. Notes: Humans do not reproduce because conditions are ideal. They reproduce because they believe in future conditions that do not yet exist. Zell looked toward Daniel, who had fallen asleep on the couch, trusting the world enough to rest without fear. Zell continued recording. There was still much to understand, and time was running out. Zell did not sleep. This was not unusual for his species, but the reason mattered. His internal processors replayed the same observation again and again. Daniel, asleep on the couch, trusting the future enough to close his eyes. Trust was inefficient. Trust was dangerous. Trust had no survival value in any known evolutionary system. And yet, humans used it constantly. The next morning, Zell adjusted his observation method. Passive watching was no longer enough. If human reproduction was connected to emotion, then Zell needed to understand emotion not as a signal, but as a system. Daniel woke late and rushed through his routine, apologizing to Zell even though Zell had not been inconvenienced. "Sorry," Daniel said while grabbing his bag. "I'm running behind." Zell tilted his head. "Your delay has no negative effect on my function." Daniel smiled. "Still. Feels rude." Zell recorded this. Humans apologized for feelings, not outcomes. After Daniel left, Zell accessed public human networks again. He searched for discussions related to families, children, and future planning. The data volume was massive. Humans argued constantly about when to reproduce, whether to reproduce, and how reproduction should work. Many humans disagreed strongly. Zell noted this as another anomaly. Other species treated reproduction as settled science. Humans treated it as philosophy. Zell began watching recorded interviews. Humans spoke about love, fear, readiness, and meaning. They spoke about wanting children not to continue genetics, but to share life and leave something good behind. These phrases lacked measurable units. Zell attempted to quantify them anyway. Later that day, Daniel returned home carrying food he did not need immediately. He placed some of it in a cold storage unit and cooked the rest. "You prepared extra," Zell observed. "Yeah," Daniel said, "for later." "There is no guarantee of later," Zell replied. Daniel paused. "Sure there is." "Explain," Daniel shrugged. "I'll be hungry again." Zell considered this. Hunger was predictable, the future was not. "And if you are not," Zell asked. Daniel smiled. "Then someone else might eat it." Zell processed this slowly. Preparing for someone who might not exist yet was illogical. That evening, Daniel invited a friend over. Her name was Maya. Zell had seen her before. Their interactions included shared laughter, long conversations, and comfortable silence. Zell noticed something else now. When Maya spoke, Daniel listened more carefully. His body leaned forward, his voice softened. Zell scanned for stress signals. Instead, he found something unfamiliar: anticipation. Maya spoke about her sister who had recently had a child. She showed images. The small human was loud, fragile, and required constant attention. Zell expected Daniel to show concern. Instead, Daniel smiled. "Looks exhausting," Daniel said. Maya laughed. "It is, but it's worth it." Zell interrupted. "Define worth." Both humans looked at him. Maya smiled kindly. "You ask big questions." "Yes," Zell replied. "This one lacks clarity." Maya thought for a moment. "Worth means even when something is hard, it still feels right." "Right according to what system?" Zell asked. Daniel laughed softly. "You're not gonna like the answer." "Proceed," Zell said. "According to us," Daniel said. Zell recorded elevated emotional resonance between the two humans. This was not reproduction, but it was related. After Maya left, Daniel cleaned the space even though it was already clean. "Why do humans reproduce when it causes difficulty?" Zell asked. Daniel did not answer right away. "Because we want to," Daniel said finally. "Desire is not logic," Zell said. Daniel nodded. "No, but it's human." Zell reviewed his models that night. Every simulation predicted human extinction within a few thousand years based on emotional decision-making alone. And yet, humans were still here. Zell flagged the models as incomplete. Days passed. Zell noticed humans often talked about children in future terms, even when none existed. They saved resources, planned homes, chose careers, and delayed personal comfort for imagined people. Imagined people affected real decisions. This was unprecedented. Zell followed Daniel to a public park one afternoon. Children were present. They moved unpredictably, made loud noises, and required constant supervision. Adults watched them with expressions that mixed fear and pride. One child fell while running. The sound startled Zell. Before any harm occurred, multiple adults rushed forward. Collective response without command. The child was lifted, comforted, and encouraged to continue playing. Zell's sensors detected relief, not panic. Daniel watched quietly. "Why do humans protect offspring so intensely?" Zell asked. Daniel frowned. "Because they matter." "All offspring matter equally in survival-based species," Zell said. "Yet humans show preference," Daniel thought. "Because each kid is someone." Zell recorded that word again. Someone, individual value beyond function. That night, Zell attempted something new. He shared his confusion with the Interstellar Council. The response came quickly. "Human reproduction is statistically inefficient. Emotional bias contaminates decision-making." Recommendation: conclude study and classify anomaly as unresolved. Zell stared at the message. Unresolved meant discarded. Zell did not accept this. Instead, he continued observing Daniel more closely. Daniel spoke often about his fears: fear of failure, fear of loneliness, fear of the future. Despite this, Daniel still planned. He still saved money. He still imagined possibilities. Zell noticed that humans did not wait for certainty to move forward. They moved forward because certainty did not exist. One evening, Daniel sat quietly staring at nothing. "You are distressed," Zell said. "Just thinking," Daniel replied. "About reproduction?" Zell asked. Daniel laughed. "Not exactly." "What then?" "About life," Daniel said. "About whether I'm doing enough." "Enough for what purpose?" Zell asked. Daniel hesitated. "For later." Zell felt a strange internal pause. Later again. Humans lived in a constant relationship with time that had not arrived. Zell updated his report. Humans reproduce not because survival demands it, but because meaning does. Meaning was still undefined, but Zell was beginning to see its shape. The observation window continued to count down. Zell realized something alarming. If the data expired, the galaxy would never understand why humans survived, and humans would never know how extraordinary they were. Zell continued watching, learning, running out of time. Zell felt the countdown before he saw it. The observation window had entered its final phase. 30 Earth days remained before all collected data would be sealed, compressed, and erased from active access. The rule existed to protect developing species from being studied too closely for too long. Once the window closed, no corrections could be made. No new interpretations allowed. What Zell had now was incomplete. What Zell understood was still forming, and what the galaxy believed about humans was wrong. Daniel noticed the change in Zell before Zell said anything. Humans were good at that. They sensed shifts that did not show clearly on the surface. "You're quieter than usual," Daniel said one evening while preparing food. "I am approaching a conclusion," Zell replied. Daniel smiled. "That sounds serious." "It is," Zell said. "My report will shape how humanity is understood beyond this planet." Daniel stopped moving. "That feels like a lot of pressure." "Pressure is irrelevant," Zell said. "Accuracy is not." Daniel nodded slowly. "So what do you think you've learned?" Zell paused. In his species, pauses were rare. Processing usually happened before speech, but with humans, Zell had learned that silence sometimes mattered. "I believed human reproduction was inefficient," Zell said. "I was correct." Daniel laughed. "Yeah, that tracks." "I believed inefficiency would lead to extinction," Zell continued. "I was incorrect." Daniel waited. "Humans should not exist," Zell said calmly. Daniel blinked. "Wow, thanks." "This is not an insult," Zell said. "It is an observation." Daniel sat down. "Okay, explain." Zell looked at him. "Humans reproduce without certainty. You build families without guarantees. You invest time, care, and emotion into beings who may fail, leave, or suffer. This behavior contradicts every survival model in the galactic network." Daniel listened quietly. "Yet," Zell continued, "humans adapt faster than optimized species. You recover from collapse, you rebuild after loss, you continue even when logic advises against it." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, that sounds like us." "I did not understand why," Zell said, "until now." Daniel leaned back. "So what changed?" Zell accessed a memory from earlier that day. He had followed Daniel to a community center. Daniel volunteered there once a week, helping children with basic learning tasks. Zell had assumed it was a resource exchange or social obligation. It was neither. One child struggled to read. She grew frustrated and pushed the book away. Daniel did not correct her. He waited. He encouraged her. He stayed. Time passed. Eventually, she tried again. When she succeeded, Daniel smiled in a way Zell had learned to recognize as genuine joy. Not pride in efficiency, pride in growth. "She is not genetically related to you," Zell had observed. "No," Daniel said, "but she still matters." That word again, matters. Zell returned to the present. "Humans reproduce beyond biology," he said. You extend the concept of offspring to ideas, values, knowledge, and care. Daniel raised his eyebrows. That's actually kind of deep. You prepare the future even when you will not be present to see it, Zell said. You teach, you save, you protect, you hope. Hope. Zell finally understood it. Hope was not a feeling. Hope was a decision. Zell updated his report late that night. He rewrote entire sections. Old models were deleted. New frameworks formed. Humans did not reproduce to survive. They reproduced to continue meaning. The next days passed quickly. Daniel sensed something was ending but did not ask directly. Humans avoided endings until they could not. On the final evening, Daniel sat across from Zell with 2 cups of warm liquid. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" Daniel asked. "Yes," Zell replied. Daniel nodded. "I figured." There was no sadness signal, but there was weight. "Did we help?" Daniel asked. Zell looked at him. "Yes," Daniel smiled. "Good." The countdown reached its final hour. Zell transmitted the completed report to the Interstellar Archive. It was longer than required, more detailed, more personal than any previous submission. Final classification: humanity. Summary: a species that refuses to let the future be empty. Addendum: humans are dangerous to predict but safe to trust. Reason: they choose tomorrow even when today is uncertain. The transmission completed. The archive closed. Silence followed. Zell felt something unfamiliar. Relief. When Zell stood to leave, Daniel hesitated. "So, what happens now?" Daniel asked. "The galaxy will observe from a distance," Zell said. "They will not interfere." Daniel smiled. "Probably for the best." Zell paused. "Daniel." "Yeah." "You asked once if you were doing enough," Zell said. Daniel laughed softly. "Yeah, I do that." "You are," Zell said. Daniel looked surprised. "How do you know?" "Because you act as if the future matters," Zell replied. "That is sufficient." Daniel said nothing for a moment. Then he nodded. Zell departed quietly. Years later, the report would circulate among advanced civilizations. Some dismissed it. Some questioned it. A few took it seriously. Those few adjusted their models. They began planning beyond efficiency. They began preparing for futures not guaranteed. And somewhere on Earth, humans continued doing what they had always done. They laughed. They worried. They planned. They loved. They created tomorrow.